Before computer games and slick modern designs, a lot of players first dipped their toes into the world of board wargaming through the Usborne Publishing Battle Books. These unique books weren't just something to read, they were a hands-on gateway to strategy, tactics, and the thrill of battle, as well as an introduction to print and play games. In today's video, we're going to crack open the second book, take a nostalgic journey back in time, and see how it still holds up for fans of wargaming today, here on Legendary Tactics. When I was in grade 4 or 5, I stumbled across an Usborne Battle Book in my school library, specifically the second in the series, Knights at War. There were 4 of them available, and I must have signed each one out countless times. I can still remember sitting in my living room after school playing those games over and over. What made them so special was how they blended educational content with games that really brought the subject matter to life. The second half of each book featured 4 games, complete with large, full-color A3 boards and cutout counters, either simple flat tokens or fold-up, stand-up pieces. I had completely forgotten about these books until recently when they suddenly came to mind. Curious, I started digging online, wondering how many others might have enjoyed them as much as I did. And that's what led me here, to share them with you. Let's take a look at Book 2, Knights at War. One interesting footnote before we begin. The writer of these battle game books is Andrew McNeil, who is the designer of the Avalon Hill classic Kingmaker, which is set at the time of the War of the Roses, the same era as this book's games. Arsouf is a 2-player historical battle game recreating the clash between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin on September 7th, 1191 during the Third Crusade. The Crusader player must shepherd a vulnerable column of infantry and baggage along the coastal road towards Arsouf, using powerful squadrons of Templars and Hospitallers to hold the line. Meanwhile, Saladin's forces, Mamelukes, horse archers, and skirmishers rely on speed and hit-and-run tactics to whittle the column down and delay it. It's a tense scenario of protection versus harassment, with asymmetric strengths that mirror the real battle. Arsouf is the most traditional wargame in Battle Game Book 2. Movement is simple but restrictive. Baggage creeps slowly, infantry trudges cross-country, and only the cavalry provides the speed as well as the muscle. Combat uses a straightforward fighting value plus die roll with bonuses for charges, generals, and adjacent defenders. Wounded units linger on the board as defensive roadblocks, which could lead to artificial stalemates, though players might want to implement a house rule to force retreats. In practice, the Crusader spends the early turns scrambling across a ford and forming a defensive perimeter, then endures 15 to 20 turns of relentless harassment. The Saracen player has the initiative and can afford to throw away units if it means breaking through to the baggage train, though they bear the risk of being on the offensive. The result is a tense, asymmetric contest, stressful and attritional for the Crusader, aggressive and opportunistic for Saladin. Both sides will be hesitant to strike first for fear of counterattack, an outcome that mirrors the historical battle. While solid strategy can be used to improve a player's chances, the truth is that victory in Arsouf often comes down to the dice. However, despite flaws in the wounded unit mechanic, Arsouf is reasonably solid as a one-page historical simulation and the closest thing to a proper wargame in the book, which earns it a middling grade of, say, 3 out of 5. Siege is a 2-player abstract castle assault game where Earl d'Assault leads an attacking force trying to capture Baron Defender within 40 turns, reflecting the limited days of feudal service. With 19 knights and the ability to utilize siege equipment like ladders, rams, mines, catapults, and towers, they must breach the fortress before time runs out. The defenders, only 10 knights strong, hold the advantage of sturdy walls, fortifications, and nasty surprises like boiling oil, Greek fire, and hurled rocks. The game becomes a race of attrition and engineering ingenuity, as the attackers weigh where and when to commit their siege engines, maneuvering files of men, feinting and misleading the enemy, while defenders desperately repel wave after wave, carefully repositioning to hold weak points. Combat combines dice rolls, unit bonuses, and siege equipment strength, with retreat mechanics critical to survival. Crowding units leads to rapid losses. The game's one page of rules leaves several ambiguities, such as handling undefended walls, multi-square siege towers, and capturing the Baron, which require house rules. Despite these gaps, the game offers tense tactical choices, balancing offense and defense, and rewarding careful planning of retreats. The variety of viable attack strategies and the challenge of defending the walls successfully earned this game a solid rating of 4 out of 5. Border Raiders is a two-player asymmetric game set in 13th century Eastern Germany, where Karl the Black must loot and burn Duke Conrad's villages and steal livestock while Conrad defends his holdings. Success depends on using archers, men-at-arms, leaders, and knights effectively to protect or destroy the farms and villages, which can be burned by Karl the Black simply by moving the required pieces onto that square. It's a quick cat-and-mouse style wargame of raiding, pursuit, and ambush, where timing and positioning are critical. The board uses variable-sized squares to reflect terrain, and each side has equal numbers of the aforementioned units, which each have different fighting values and movement limits. Combat combines a total of fighting values with dice rolls, with archers able to fire at adjacent, orthogonally located enemy units. Overall, the system heavily favors stacking one's forces. The game tends to be decided in the early battles. Either Karl fails to burn enough villages and fields early enough and loses 7 of his men, thereby making victory impossible, or Conrad's forces are quickly reduced, leaving Karl free to pillage and plunder. The livestock objectives rarely come into play because the initial fighting dominates, and the archers, which should add some strategic depth, are too limited in their range and firepower and too easily avoided to be effective. While the mechanics realistically simulate attrition, the gameplay is unbalanced and anticlimactic, with the early combat outcomes largely determining the winner and the looting phase becoming tedious afterwards. Overall, it might earn a rating of 2 out of 5, as the game does not live up to its exciting premise. Tournament is designed for 2 to 4 players, and, as one might expect, it recreates the spectacle of a medieval tournament. Over 3 days of jousting, players field teams of knights representing different European regions, advancing through a challenge joust, a knockout joust, and culminating in a grand melee. In jousts, knights secretly choose target areas, sweep, body, or head, combine dice rolls with their prowess ratings, and move along the lists to score hits. Winning boosts a knight's prowess for subsequent rounds. The melee on the final day allows all remaining knights to engage simultaneously, with mounted knights enjoying mobility and attack bonuses, while unhorsed knights must rely on positioning and teamwork. Practical play balances dice-driven chance with tactical movement and coordinated attacks. Tournament is a perfect game for running a personal league, highlighting the game's combination of strategy, excitement, and immersive medieval flair. This is a highly engaging, fun game that earns a rating of 5 out of 5, and could be one of those games that could spark a long-term interest in board gaming. Overall, there are some great little games in Knights at War that should appeal to kids of all ages. I especially remember Siege and Tournament from my days of playing them in front of the TV when I was younger. Stay tuned for more coverage of these classic books. Thanks for watching, and please consider liking, subscribing, or even becoming a member so we can continue to bring you these blasts from the past. This is Legendary Tactics.